Hey there, and welcome to the Girl Means Business podcast, the show that's all about helping photographers just like you build a thriving business without sacrificing your sanity. I'm your host, Kendra Swalls, a former teacher turned full-time photographer and marketing coach, here to fill your earbuds each week with practical tips, real-life stories, and a whole lot of encouragement. So if you're ready to dive in, let's get to it because this girl means business. Hey there, welcome back to the Girl Means Business podcast. In this week's episode, I'm going to share with you a marketing story that I heard on another podcast I listened to. I love listening to podcasts. It's part of the reason I started doing a podcast, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts about business and marketing. And the cool thing is 95 to 99% of them are not about photography. And so there's some really, really cool lessons that you can take away from what other industries and other companies are doing. Even sometimes these larger companies, it might feel like that a lot of the marketing that you hear around some of the bigger corporations don't really apply to small businesses. But when you break it down, a lot of them are really great strategies that can be applied to your small business in your own creative way. And you're going to see me here, you're going to hear me talk a lot about the word creative today, because I think when it comes to marketing your business, the more creative you can get, the more outside of the box thinking you can do around your business and your marketing and how you're putting yourself out there, the more likely you are to get noticed. Now, the scary thing with being creative in your marketing, obviously, is that it means putting yourself out there in a way that maybe hasn't been done before or hasn't been done very often. And there are going to be times when it doesn't work, and that's okay. It might sting a little bit at first because you're like, oh, that was such a fun idea, or oh, I was really putting myself out there and it kind of flopped. Pick yourself back up and keep moving. And the more often you do this and the more comfortable you get with kind of thinking outside the box, the more likely you are to be excited about it, the more likely you are to do it, and the more likely you are to have it succeed. Okay, so what started this whole conversation? I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about some different companies. One of the ones that they mentioned was Red Bull, and how when Red Bull first started, because I don't want to say it was the first energy drink. I don't think that's accurate, but it was one of the first, like, most kind of common household name energy drinks. And if you noticed, I don't know if you're someone who drinks or not, but there was a big craze around like vodka Red Bulls and things at the at bars and at clubs, because it not only allowed you to stay awake longer and party longer, but it also, you had like the zero sugar Red Bulls, all the things. Well, what was interesting was that when Red Bull first launched, their marketing team had to kind of sit down and go, well, what are we going to do to get our name out there? Because there's a million different drink brands out there. Like, how do we set ourselves apart? How do we get noticed? Because when you talk about like food and drinks, there's only so much shelf space in stores for different beverages. And in order to get a shelf space, you have to be a pretty commonly known name, or you're paying a lot for that space, or you have to like have the right connections and have a lot of kind of momentum behind your brand. And so Red Bull was like, how do we get momentum behind our brand? How do we get this to be something that people are like going into stores asking for? Because that's part of the key, is if you can have someone like asking for your company or your brand, and in our case as photographers, it would be similar to people going to Google and searching for your specific brand title, your company name, or going on social media and searching for your company name directly. That's the same as someone going into a store and asking for a Red Bull. So they had this question of like, how do we get people talking about us? Well, one thing that most people are going to be interested in, it's going to pique their interest, is if other people are doing it. If you go into a bar and you see that everybody has a Coors Light in their hand, you might think, oh, well, maybe I need to try a Coors Light, or maybe that's what everybody drinks here, so maybe it's on special or whatever. Like, it's that crowd mentality of, if everybody else is doing it, I'm going to do it too. So they were like, well, how can we make it look like everybody's drinking Red Bull, even though they maybe aren't really drinking Red Bull. So here's the genius behind this marketing plan. They sent out people to go into nightclubs and bars and leave empty cans of Red Bull sitting around the bar. So you might walk into a bar on a Friday night and you go sit down at a table, and maybe, there was people there before you and they hadn't cleared the glasses off yet. And you sit down, there's a couple empty glasses and then 2 or 3 cans of Red Bull that are completely empty. Or you're walking into a bar and there's empty Red Bulls, kind of cluttering up the trash can by the front door or whatever. Like, I don't know where they were leaving these, but they were just kind of leaving them over by like the pool tables. There might be a little high top table and they leave an empty Red Bull can there. And really, like, what it did, and it worked, obviously, because Red Bull became a well-known name brand, is it created this sense of, if everybody else is doing it, then I should probably do it too. So it was really genius in the fact that it probably didn't cost them a lot of money other than some empty cans and paying people to go out to the bars. And eventually now that's kind of evolved into this idea of sort of influencer marketing and things like that. But it was this sort of boots on the ground guerrilla marketing strategy that got people interested in, like, what is Red Bull and why are all these people drinking it? Why, like, what's sitting around? There's all these empty cans sitting on this bar. Clearly this is a popular drink. I should try it. They try it. They like it. They keep buying it. They go into their grocery store. They ask for it. It gets stocked on shelves. It becomes a family household name. So whether you like Red Bull or not, you can agree that it was a pretty genius marketing strategy. So when it comes to creative marketing, there's a lot of blocks I think that we as photographers have, which is interesting to me because we are a creative group as a whole. Like, our whole basis is around creativity. We are creating art on a regular basis by taking these beautiful photos in our editing style and all the things. But when it comes to talking about our brand, when it comes to talking about our services and our business, when it comes to marketing those services, there's like this block we have around being creative. And what I want you to start doing is I want you to start looking for ways you can creatively market your business. And we'll talk about a few examples in just a second. And B, I want you to start noticing and looking for other examples of creative marketing. And not just in photography. If it happens to be in photography, that's great, but maybe even in other industries. One that I think about often, and I know this has become kind of a common practice these days, but at some point, you drive down the road and you see all these people outside, like spinning signs or holding up signs for like open houses or home builders or whatever they're advertising on the side of the street. And at one point, nobody was doing that. So there had to have been a company or a person, a business who was like, hey, I bet we could get more traction in our business, more traffic into our store if we had somebody outside, like, actually holding the sign as opposed to like the little sandwich board sign you put on the sidewalk. What if someone is actively out there, like dancing around, spinning the sign around and pointing at our shop? And it became a common practice. By the time, people were probably like, what the hell? Like, this is a little bit crazy, but it works. And that's why more people do it. So even though it might seem a little outside the box, it might seem a little scary, it might seem a little out there, it's okay. In fact, sometimes that might be the thing that really gets people to pay attention, because these days everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody is posting pictures. Everybody is posting videos on social media. Everybody is doing all the same things that everybody else is doing, and it just becomes white noise. So I created a list of some things that I think would be some creative ways to market your photography business, and these don't take a whole lot of money. Sometimes they take time, but it really just takes you thinking about who is your ideal client, which we've talked about in recent episodes. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen. Knowing who your ideal client is, figuring out where are they spending time and what is going to appeal to them in a way that is unique and different. Okay, so one of the things that really kind of sounded fun and interesting was this idea of like a pop-up photo installation. And it doesn't have to be, I know that sounds maybe like big and intimidating, but let me kind of break it down for you. So I am a huge fan of the show Friends. And there was a time, and they may still do it, I don't know, but where they were doing like a Friends pop-up thing, and like, I don't know if you call it installation, I guess, but it was like different cities and different places. They would have like the orange couch from the Central Perk. They would have like a fun backdrop, a coffee table with some of the big, huge coffee mugs, maybe a Central Perk sign, or a few little like memorabilia type things from the series that you would recognize if you watch the show. And they would just set them up in a park somewhere, and then people could come around and take pictures with the couch and the background and all the things. And it was so fun. And I know that other things have done this. I know like right now, like Saturday Night Live has their 50th anniversary, and they did like an immersive one, like in New York, I think. And it was like sold out super fast. And you could go in and you could kind of interact with a lot of the sets and things on Saturday Night Live. They've talked about doing this in different cities. And so how can we take that, and how can we kind of maybe scale it down a little bit and create this really fun pop-up installation? So what you could do is you could say, okay, I let's say you're a senior photographer. So then maybe you partner with a couple of high schools, and you're like, hey, um, you have a football game on Friday night. I would love to set up like a fun pop-up photo shoot opportunity, op, backdrop, lights, whatever. And then the kids can come by and get their pictures, and then it's sent to them digitally somehow. You can or you send them a gallery out, and it has all your branding on it. Like the background could have your brand on it. You could do Polaroids if you wanted to and put stickers on them with your branding on it. There's lots of ways, almost like a photo booth type setup if you wanted to do it that way. But creating like a fun, interactive way for people who don't know who you are to learn about your brand. I know at the small school my kids go to for homecoming, they have a couple different businesses that'll come like set up. One of them is like a snow cone truck, but one of them was an organization that came and they handed out crumble cookies. And of course, everybody loves a cookie. And it was like the first, 75 people that come in the gates get a crumble cookie. But then inside the box, they'd put like their information and stuff. And I was like, that's really smart. Like little things like that, I think, are creative marketing ideas that people don't always think of. Like we think of, it's so easy to sit behind a computer screen and post something on social media and be like, okay, I'm marketing. I'm doing my marketing. Check the box. But that's not always what's working. And that's what everybody's doing. So it kind of is saturated. It's kind of, it's done. It's old school. I mean, it's not old school, but it's been done and it's very hard to get noticed. Whereas if you are out in your community and you are face to face having conversations with people and meeting with people, that is how you set yourself apart from all these other people. I think of the photographer in my area that I'm good friends with, and she does all of the sports photography for our school district, which again, it's a very small district. But she shows up to, and this is really how she started doing it. She started showing up to a lot of the like little league type games. So we call it PALs here, but it's like the elementary school, up to sixth grade youth sports. And she had kids participating in these sports. So she would go and she would take pictures of the games. And then she would send the gallery out to the families, to the parents, to the coaches. And then she kind of became known as like the sports photographer for the youth teams. And they would start paying her to do their team photos, or they would sometimes, send her a Venmo for coming to the game, or she would charge for the galleries, like not a whole lot, just a little bit here and there. And then that started moving into the high school sports. And so now she goes to all the basketball games, all the home football games, all of the baseball and softball games and track and all these things. And she's taking all these great photos. And now the school district wants to like basically hire her to come on and do it as like a part of the district. She's doing it for other schools and things like that. But it started off by her just being part of the community. She would show up, she would introduce herself to the coaches, she would be introducing herself to the parents by sending out the galleries and getting to know them and building relationships. And now not only does she do all of the sports stuff in our town. But she gets a majority of the family and senior clients, and which is totally fine with me because I don't necessarily want to do all of those, but we also share in some of that. But the great thing is that she, without realizing it,
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
if you've been listening to the Girl Means Business podcast for any amount of time, then you know my love of email marketing runs deep. Not only is it a great way to generate new leads, but it's one of the most effective methods for nurturing warm leads and turning them into sales. Now, over the years, I've tested several email platforms, and my favorite by far is Flowdesk. Not only do they make email marketing simple and easy, even for the technically challenged, but they have everything you need to create stunning emails, capture leads, make sales, and automate the entire process, giving you time back in your busy day. And the cherry on top is you're only charged one flat fee no matter how many subscribers you have. So while other platforms will increase your price when you go over your pricing tier limit, Flowdesk has no price increases or hidden fees. If you're ready to give Flowdesk a try, click the link below in the show notes to save 50% off your first year. Let Flowdesk help you design emails people will love. Click the link below and check it out. I have a feeling you're going to love it just as much as I do. Created a marketing strategy for herself that was just so simple as be present in your community. Be someone that people know, be someone that makes connections and builds relationships, because that is ultimately how and why they're going to want to hire you. So that's a great example as well. Just kind of like even joining, networking groups or chamber of commerce things, those are always good, but that's not a super outside the box idea. Okay, so let's talk about items. So we heard the Red Bull story about how they left their empty cans around bars and clubs and things like that. What if you took that same idea, you created some branded swag, whether it is cards or little photo magnets or whatever, pens, sticky notes, and you just left them around places. Think about like pens, for example. Okay, how many times do you go to a restaurant and the waitress or waiter hands you your pen and then you maybe accidentally take the pen with you? Well, if that was your pen that had your logo on it and your branding on it, and someone takes it home with them and then they end up using it, they throw it in their purse, now they use it, they're seeing your name without even realizing it. It's subconsciously kind of going into their brain. Or if you're in a waiting room at a doctor's office and you lay a couple pens on the table, or a couple of notepads or whatever, like, again, think about your ideal client, think about your locations of places they might spend time, and then focus on like creating some swag they might be interested in. But it's a really cool way to, kind of spark curiosity. And again, people will see the name and they'll be like, oh, photography. Like, why? I've been kind of looking for a photographer for X, Y, or Z. And they might, you never know, they might, go search for you and fall in love with your work and want to hire you. So those are some ways you can kind of take like what Red Bull has done and turn it into your own sort of thing. And it's kind of like the business card idea. Like everyone used to carry business cards with them. I very rarely have business cards with me. But even if you were like, I don't have a business card, but I have this pen or I have this like whatever, like I used to have, like I went on Amazon and I bought a huge bulk pack, or maybe it was even Oriental Trading, I can't remember, of these little like compact mirrors, the kind that like you can open and close. And they were not super expensive. And then I got stickers. I had like little stickers made with my logo on them and my website on them. And I put stickers on the outside of the mirrors, the little compacts. And then I would just hand those out sometimes, or I'd leave them in like women's restrooms and things like that. And now I don't know for sure that people hired me off of that because they didn't specifically say like, I found you because of the compact I found in the bathroom at this place. But it definitely probably, at least got my name out there. So get creative. Think about what is something your ideal client would have or use or need or want that you can create some branded swag for, and then start leaving it places. And I know that sounds like it's just like throwing money out the door, but you're doing the same thing when you're paying to post on social media for ads, or when you're paying to boost a post on social media. It's the same thing. You're putting money towards something, but you don't always know what the result's going to be. And that's okay. Like, you just have to kind of budget that in. And if you need to raise your prices to cover the cost of that marketing, you can do that a little bit. Or just set aside every month, you're going to set aside X amount of dollars to put towards buying more swag to hand out to people. And it doesn't have to be like super expensive. I know I use the example of pens, compacts, things like that, but even like little cards, postcards with examples of your photos on it. Those are super cheap to order off of Canva or Vistaprint or any of those places. And then you could leave those out places as well. They're just less likely to get picked up because they aren't something people will like keep and hold on to. Okay, moving on. So let's talk about collaborations. This is one that I think more people are starting to do, but it still hasn't quite reached like what I feel like is max potential. And that's where like coming up with creative collaborations. So this could mean, working with a local business. I know there was a photographer in a Facebook group that I helped run that she mentioned that there's a coffee shop that she goes to all the time to work, and she's kind of struck up a conversation with the owner. And one day she went in there, and the owner, they were kind of redecorating. She was like, "Hey, why don't you bring me some of your photos to display in our coffee shop?" And she that day printed photos, framed them, took them back up there, and they are now hanging in a coffee shop with her information on them. And all because she started conversations. And so little things like that, but those don't happen unless you are like in person networking, which I think is a lost marketing art form that we, again, all want to hide behind our computer screens, especially if you're introverted. It's easy to get stuck in that rut of like, I don't want to go out and make small talk with people. I don't want to network, but it really, really can be so huge for your business. And then the last one is kind of sponsorship. So this goes along the lines of, kind of back to like the pop-up idea, but like if there are local events in your area that you feel like would be worth your time and your money and your energy to sponsor, it's a great way to get your information out there. Whether it be like your children's activities, like there's a lot of vendor fairs and things like that, which obviously having a booth and stuff is fine, but even just sponsoring it, getting your things put into like the swag bags that people get when they go to the event, those can all be really helpful. If there's some kind of cool like speaking event happening, or I don't know, like what am I trying to say? Like a convention of some kind, like you could maybe offer to sponsor something, even if it's not the whole thing, but you could say like, hey, I'm going to sponsor like this one aspect of it, or this one like cool thing that I'm going to do where I come do like quick 2-minute headshots for everybody at the event. And I'm going to sponsor that, which by sponsoring, you're giving your time, but it's still a way to get your name and your information out there. Ultimately, what I want you to start doing is just start training your brain to see and find and come up with creative ways to get your name out into your community. That's all it is. It's just getting your name in front of your community. You're not traveling the world hoping to get clients all over the globe. I want you to start just thinking about in your own like 20-mile radius of where you live, depending on, I know some people are like, well, I live in a super small town, so I have to drive so far to get clients. But just think about wherever your clients are at, how can you show up in that community and start making a name for yourself in some way that makes you stand out? That's all it is. It's just, how do you stand out? And so hopefully the examples in this episode, the Red Bull example, will get those wheels spinning. And it really is something you have to train your brain to do. And really, marketing in general is just training your brain to see things in a certain way. But once you start noticing how other companies are showing up and how they're doing things, you're going to be like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Well, that's okay. Put it in the back of your mind, and next time you can do that. Or, I do this all the time. I watch the news and I'll see like some event that was happening around our town. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that event was happening. I wish I had, because I want to be a part of it. Well, instead of just kind of being like, oh, dang, I missed an opportunity, I will make notes somewhere in my phone or on a calendar to be like, hey, look into this, bookmark their website so that when they start it up for next time or next year, I know to then be a part of it or go apply for a spot or whatever it is that the thing was. So it's just a matter of retraining our brains to go, it's not about clicking a button behind a screen. It's about building connections and making a name for ourselves within our community and doing it in a way that is fun, is creative, that is different, that is unique, and that's going to get you noticed. So hopefully this helped you kind of get the ball rolling on that, get those gears in your head turning. If you have ever done like a really cool creative marketing strategy, I would love to hear about it. I would love to share about it with our audience. So feel free to reach out to me. Again, you can email me at kendra@girlmeansbusiness.com. You can find me on Instagram and DM me. You can also head down to the show notes where it says Ask Me Anything. And you can ask me any question you want in there and include any fun feedback from these episodes. But I do love hearing from y'all when something in an episode kind of sparks an idea. So please, please, please feel free to reach out and share your ideas with me. Because even, it's a community. And if you've done something really fun in your area that has worked, that someone else can apply to their area, then you've now passed it or paid it forward and passed it along to someone else. I think that's an amazing thing to do. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you have an amazing, amazing week, and I will see you back here next week, same time, same place.